Welcome to Out of the Fog. I'm your host, Melissa Royle. Tonight we have a very special feature-length interview with Alan Doyle. He's an actor, singer, author, and he's one of the best storytellers in a province full of them. So he's here to talk about his new record, his new book, and we'll be back with all of that right after this.
You're watching Rogers TV, St. John's.
I've been trying to learn a new language.
Keep your distance. You can make my
You're watching Rogers TV, St. John's.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. We're here with musician, actor, writer Alan Doyle, and we're so lucky to have him here. Alan, I can't believe your family lets you out of the house when you're finally in town.
I got a day pass. You know what? Congratulations on the new digs. It's the first thing I would say. It was always posh, but now it's stepped up quite a bit. I haven't been here since you got the new spot, so.
Well, welcome.
And nice to see
I'm
you
new
here
too.
Yeah, way to go.
So you got the new book, Newfoundlander in Canada.
Yeah.
Documents your travels with early Great Big Sea days across the country. Yeah. One of the things that jumped out to me in it is that you make a lot of familial references, all the different provinces. Quebec's the step sibling, you know, PEI's the sensible older sister.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think Canada's a dysfunctional family or a big happy one?
Well, all families are a little bit dysfunctional, aren't they? Like, you know what? I stumbled upon that thing a couple of chapters in that I might be able to draw, because there's a question that comes at the end of the book that asks me, where do I think Newfoundland fits at the Canadian supper table? And that's a real question that was asked to me in a real interview one time. And I said, well, and I answered it. And so I figured maybe I should draw everyone else's place at the Canadian supper table. And I got to print them all on one sheet, but one does occur every province, and I do sort of, you know, as a kind of a device to show what I think the relationship of Newfoundland to these other places would be, you know, if we all were at a supper table and and maybe I'll put it all on a T-shirt or something like that eventually. But it was, you know, it was just one of the kind of ways I figured I would try to show, without telling out loud type thing, how the other provinces of Canada appeared to me, you know, in my early 20s. You know, a kid from, you know, the far east of the country, and what every one of those places looked like as a first impression out the window of a band van.
Right. And, you know, being a Newfoundlander in Canada, I mean, you're a little bit of both, of course, but a poll came out this week. Newfoundlanders, even more than Quebecers, actually identify more with their province than as Canadians. Where do you fit on that? Who do you identify as? Who do you introduce yourself as?
I think the great thing about, like, being in Canada, of course, is that it's the country that not only supports but encourages its regions to be different. You know, it's like Canada is probably one of the only, I always said Canada was the only country Great Big Sea could have ever been a big band in. You know, or a regional, very regional band, and, you know, traditional music from, I was like, find me a polka band in Germany that's on the top 20. You know, it just never happened, you know. So Canada, like, one of the most delightful things I came to discover is that if we were going to join a country somewhere in the world, and we were worried that it would somehow affect our, you know, our own identity, you know, we couldn't have joined a better one. You know, and I tell the example of, you know, the biggest city in the country, you know, in Toronto. And like, I mean, you've been there many times.
I lived
there.
You know,
every single, you know, community around the world that moves to Toronto, you know, whatever country, whatever culture, they're not only, you know, encouraged to bring their food and music and wine or whatever with them, but you're also entitled to one day a week on the entire Danforth, where they'll do a parade up and down, you know. And so it's this, you know, we are a kind of country, and I think it's a wonderful thing that supports its own. So, you know, I think you don't have to decide if you're a Newfoundlander or a Canadian, because you can happily be both.
So traveling across the country like that, part of the hilarity of your book is that you went into this vast country that you were a part of but didn't really know much about.
Yeah.
totally in the cold, right? Like
That's
you
right.
didn't, you only had kind of vague notions of the cities, as a lot of us did growing up. You know, you know, do you think it would be a little bit different for a new band traveling now? Because I mean, some of your stories are great about walking around and trying to find a hotel or getting lost on a back road. But now, I mean, you jump on Airbnb and then Google Map your way there. So how would you think it'd be different now?
One of the cool things and difficult things, but one of the things that makes for funny stories is the fact, as you say, that we was completely blind. You know, I mean, the very first place we ever went was, you know, Halifax, Nova Scotia. And of course, we had to find a hotel for me and Bob to live in, but I couldn't afford to get on the 1-800 number for the Holiday Inn, which is the only one I knew. So that's it. You had to go walk around and try to find one, you know, or go to a travel agent. But we had about $12 a night to spend, so there was no travel agent going to find it. And like in a short period of time, like that's probably 25 years ago. Like it's completely changed, and a hotel is just one example. But as you say, like one of the sort of things about the wanderlust that I had is that I really didn't know what most of the cities, the skylines of the cities looked like. I might have seen one angle of them in a book somewhere, you know, or go get an atlas or something. But you couldn't randomly select live, you know, video footage from Main Street in Regina, you know, if you wanted to, and it was just way more difficult to get. It wasn't impossible to get, but it was way more difficult to get. And you couldn't decide 80 kilometers outside of Regina that you might want to see what Regina looks like. You know what I mean? And so it was a different era of travel, and it was much more of a mystery at the other end of it. You know, which in retrospect was amazing. At the time was difficult.
I bet. Speaking of technology, you mentioned you kept a journal some of the time throughout your early travels. Do you still do that, or do you now just, you know, go back on Twitter like the rest of us do? We did all summer.
Twitter has changed it in the last 2 or 3 years since I've been on Twitter, or a couple of years, whatever it is, a little bit, because I blog less than I used to, because the Twitter kind of has taken its place a little bit. But when Great BC started touring in 1993, I started keeping a journal. I wrote a journal, you know, in a leathery little book, you know, and sometimes it'd be some observations, you know, something I thought was very poetic or something at the time, but most often it was played here, ate this, drank this, fell asleep here. That's mostly what the entries are.
Ate the cream eggs.
Yeah, and honestly, but the thing that really sort of cemented or made a big volume of that stuff was around 96, I suppose. We, just about like every other band, got a website. And we decided right away that if we're going to have a website, we got to have stuff on it that turns over. It needed content that changed. So I started writing the From the Road blogs, my tour diary, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, you know, submissions to that are up on the website still. You can find them, you know. So I could call upon those, but in all honesty, I didn't have to go back to a lot of them on this one. I sort of did for fact checking on a couple of things. Just even if it was just a memory, I said I want to go back and make sure I didn't remember that, you know, in a different way or something back on the day, or what did I think of Quebec when I drove into it first, you know, because I might have written something about it, and so I did, you know. But mostly it was just from memory, and I wrote it all sort of right out of my head, and then we set out to fact check it as best we could with either asking some of the other guys in the band, you know, or some of it's of course in the news and the like. So, but it was really an act of memory more than anything else.
One of the stories you seem to remember very vividly is the one on Canada Day.
Yeah.
When you got a little trouble with the Queen's Buddy. Is that when you first discovered that or felt that you were kind of an emissary for Newfoundlanders, and that you weren't just representing your band, you're representing the whole province?
It wasn't really, that wasn't the first time, but it was the time when it sort of, I think we all embraced it equally and realized that, like it or lump it, we had become these ambassadors for the province, right? And because as you say, like there was like a Newfie joke for the introduction, and a sou'wester and a dinghy to pull us out on, when all the other bands had something super cool, and we were a joke. And then there was, you know, the protocol people for the Queen asked us to change the lyrics to Auntie Mary, you know, because they thought drawers. Yeah, they thought drawers was too much for Her Majesty or something, and it was all foolish in retrospect, but it was very, very. It wasn't foolish on the day because we were so young, and. You know, I didn't want to have those fights. Like, I wanted everyone up there who was organizing those gigs to love me. And I wanted them to think, oh man, the Newfoundland guys, when they show up, they're team players. Like, I didn't want to be the whiny one. But, you know, but we had to make up our mind kind of right away that we weren't going to stand for it, and that if Newfoundland was going to get misrepresented, it wasn't going to get misrepresented on our watch. And so, for better or for worse, in the weeks and months and years to follow, we became by default or de facto or something, ambassadors for Newfoundland. And I mean, I started thinking about it like when I was doing this book. I was like, can you think of a more unlikely group of people to act as your, emissaries around the world? Like, imagine pitching that if you were in government or someone, going in and saying, hey, I got an idea. I know it's a bunch of guys who will, take our message around the world. Currently, they're wearing cut-off jean shorts and Eddie Vedder wood shirts at 7 George on George Street, doing, rum tastings or something. It's like, I mean, there really couldn't be a more unlikely group of people, really, but like a band? You're gonna get a band, but that's how it worked out, and so we took it on wholeheartedly when it was sort of thrust upon us.
Yeah, you might not have been cast in the fancy tourism commercials, hey?
Yeah, yeah.
But so after all that time of representing Newfoundland and traveling across the country, I want to go back to one of the things you mentioned in your book is a couple of times is how the old guard, the old sod on the wharf used to talk about the Canadian wolf and warn you about it.
Yeah.
If you could go back now and tell those guys, what you feel about Canada, what your experience was, what would it be?
Oh, I just same things I say in the book. I just say, most of the opinion of, say, people a couple of generations ago who were born in the country of Newfoundland, or Republic of Newfoundland, and were adults, by the time the Confederation vote came along. I think if I had anything to say to them, I would say the same thing I just said to you. I'd say that, my discoveries about Canada is that, we couldn't have joined a better one if we want to remain, ourselves, because most of the country would ask nothing more of you than that. As a matter of fact, they'd encourage you to do so, as they do with every other culture they can find, and we wrapped up in the whole thing that, I can't say for sure how I would have voted because I wasn't there, but people like me, from where I'm from, didn't vote yes, and so, despite the fact that I probably would have voted the other way too. Yeah, but if I was alive and of voting age in 1948 or 49 or whatever, but no, I mean I love it. I love being Canadian. I love being a part of Canada, especially. That's been cemented more for me traveling internationally. Where you're just so relieved sometimes to have the Canadian flag on your knapsack. And I heard someone else say it, and I think it's true. Is that not that Canada is perfect, because no country is perfect, but one of the things I love about Canada is that we're always trying to make it better. We're always trying to get it right, and that's way more important, I think, than anything else.
Cool. Well, you went up to Canada to record your newest album.
Yeah.
The Week at the Warehouse.
Yeah.
We got a copy of it here.
Yeah.
It's a great record. It's real fun.
Thanks.
Tell me about working with Bob Rock.
It was so awesome. Bob's a hero of mine, right? Because I was born in 1969. So I was a teenager in the 80s, and my favorite thing in the world, of course, was, Def Leppard and hair metal and, Bon Jovi and Aerosmith and AC/DC and, all that kind of stuff, Van Halen. And he was in the middle of that whole scene, this guy from Winnipeg, who became, one of the most sought-after rock producers in the world. And he was the guy I liked a few years previous in the band called the Payolas, and like he's gone on to do Bublé and Jan Arden and The Hip and Van Morrison and on and on and on and on and on. And the funny story of it all goes, I talked to my manager Louis. I said I want to do a band record, live off the floor, old school band record, where we all set up and do it like it'll be like a concert except it's on the studio floor. And we talked about lists of names of people who still make records like that. There's not that many. And Bob's name came up, Bob Rock, and we sort of fooled around with the idea of how we might get Bob our demos and court him or whatever to come. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll ask Jan Arden, because Jan and him are buds. They've done a couple of records together. So I sent Jan a note and said, Jan, I'd like to get my stuff to Bob Rock. And Jan said, well, I'm talking to Bob Rock tomorrow, and I'm going to get him to phone you. I was like, okay, cool. So I expected maybe sometime I get a note from a manager to a manager or something. I was driving up Torbay Road the next day. It was around 2:15 because I was picking up Henry at school. And my phone rang right in front of Entles Irving, I swear to God. And I looked at it and said, Bob Rock, Hawaii. And I was like,
Did you pull over?
I did so.
Kids got to wait.
Kids had to wait that day. I pulled over in Entles Irving on Dorby, and I said, hello? He goes, is that Alan? And I go like, yeah, hello. He goes, oh, hello, Alan. This is Bob Rock. Jan Arden told me I had to call you, and I'm not about to piss off Jan Arden. I was like, hello, how are you? And that's how it started. And it went really quickly. That was in October, November. We had one meeting before Christmas, and then right after Christmas, we were out doing it.
Wow, and was it all recorded within a week?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did all this. The band came out on Saturday night. The following Saturday night, we sat down and had a little party and listened to all the demos and the rough mixes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you mentioned from Bublé to rock here, so I guess his musical repertoire is pretty wide.
Pretty wide,
so
yeah.
did that affect you? Because this record, it brings in a lot of new sounds maybe your fans of yours might not have heard you before.
right.
Was that a part of that process?
Yeah, I wanted the songs. If I wrote a song that, sounded like it might want to be a rock and roll song, let's just record it like a rock and roll song. That's fine. I mean, it's one of the great things about the band. The band can play anything. They can play jazz if you want them to play jazz. Not to worry. I have no issue. I have no intentions of doing the Alan Doyle jazz record, but it might be pretty awesome. But it's wide open. It's more of a wide open thing compared to being like in a trad band or being in a strictly country band or strictly whatever. So yeah, and so the record. I mean, that's the way my musical tastes are anyway. I often sat down and listened to a country song, and then a metal song, and then 4 songs from the Irish Descendants, and 2 Matt Burns songs, and then Taylor Swift. It's just the way, and I love that variety.
Old Taylor Swift or new Taylor Swift?
All of it, I guess. I didn't know. Is she old enough to have old Taylor Swift?
Yes, years now. But yeah, that's fun. I think my favorite song on the record is Bully Boys.
Oh yeah.
It's fun. I love how it feels like it must be a traditional song that somehow you missed.
Yeah,
because it feels like it just feels like that. But it's all you. And so tell me the story about writing that.
It was funny because I kind of forgot about it because when we did that meeting I was talking about in November with Bob, I played him 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 songs, and he picked the 8 or 10 or 9 that he liked the best, and said, I think for your fans though, wouldn't they want us to do a really Celtic sounding song, And I think he'd never really done that since the earliest days of the Payolas, and he said, do you have anything like that? And I was like, yeah, I do, actually. I said, I do have this song I wrote for a movie, but I can't remember it. I said, I sang in the chorus. I remember the chorus. And I said, I can't remember the verses. I don't know. I'll bring it back tomorrow. So anyway, so I went back to the hotel, and I didn't have the song, my original demo for the Robin Hood movie on my computer. I couldn't find it. And but years previous, of course, there was a scene in the Robin Hood movie where the merry men are leaving France and they come back to England, and they needed a shanty in the background. So I wanted to sneak a few songs in the movie, So I wrote one, and I wrote, roll me bully boys, we're in a hurry boys, we got a long way to go. We'll sing and we'll dance and bid farewell to France, and it's roll me bully boys, roll. And that's just a very common kind of structure for a shanty, and the verses would just be, drunken foolishness, the way, and with a refrain to keep everybody rowing in time, like a shanty, that kind of thing. But of course, I couldn't remember any of those verses because I just couldn't. And I went on YouTube and I found the scene in the movie because someone had popped it up there, I guess. And one of the lines from 2 verses was in there and a couple of choruses. And so I remembered that much. But on YouTube, when you look down the other side, and there's all these other suggested views or whatever.
Yep.
There was these dozens and dozens of versions of the song that had made their way around the world, and people had used a few lines from the couple of verses and wrote their own.
Oh, no way.
Oh, yeah. So it was like versions in Croatia and the Philippines and the UK and America.
In different styles of music?
All shanties, like people at shanties festivals. They called it the Robin Hood shanty. And they made up, what parts they couldn't find, they made up their own verses, which is exactly the way shanties used to go years ago. That's how they used to make their way around the world, right? And so it's so thrilling that in this modern age of technology, the shanty chorus still stays the same.
Old school viral.
It is old school viral. That's exactly what it used to be, because like Grape You See, for example, I recorded Donkey Riding. Away, hanging away we go, donkey riding, right? There's hundreds of verses to that, in different languages. Some guys, some filthier than others. Some kind of proper to sing when the bosses were around or whatever.
I only know the ones you guys picked.
That's right. But there were hundreds, and like, so it was so kind of cool, and the folky in me got a little chuffed to remember, to realize that something I wrote had kind of been entered into the folk canon. That was kind of cool.
So you mentioned Robin Hood. You
Yeah.
got the book out about your childhood. You got
Yeah.
the book out about early days of Great Big Sea.
Yeah.
When's the book coming out about hanging out with Russell Crowe and chasing him around the world?
That'd be a good book. Now that I think about it, it'd
I'm
be
looking
fun.
forward to it.
Yeah, we had some great stories and great times, and some other stuff too. There's lots of stories to tell, and most of it would just be fun, harmless, fun stories, but I've been really I've been really lucky to have pals that are always asking me, to join in whatever they're doing, whether it's Russell on films or Mark and Alan and that gang on various television shows or whatever, and even Random House came and said, "I want to write a book." I was like, "All right, you got to do that?" No, I haven't got a clue how to do that, but
I think you did all right.
yeah. But you know what I mean? I'm lucky that I get to have these experiences with friends, who are doing things that they're passionate about, and that they'll include you in it. It's so awesome.
Perfect. Yeah, doing these different things like a book and a CD. You're actually out promoting both right now. Both
Yeah.
came out pretty close together. Both industries have changed so much with technology
Yeah.
in the past little while. How would you compare what's going on in the book industry versus the music
Oh,
industry?
I'm glad you asked that. Actually, that's a good one because no one's asked that yet, and it's quite interesting to me that being in a book company right now, in an office, the head office of a book company, is exactly what being in a record company was in 1995.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Because they still have money, and they still have stores that sell their stuff that they make, right? And they still have people out selling the stuff that goes into stores, in the that kind of thing. And like they
Chapters
still,
keeps getting bigger and bigger.
yeah, they still sell physical copies of their stuff, and
Yep.
like the publishing world has managed something that the music world, the TV world, and the film world haven't. And that's that the digital age hasn't killed them, and completely changed how they do it. Because, some of that's consumer driven, because I think people still like books. But even in the digital world, for books, if people want it for like a digital reader or even an audio book or whatever, that people consume it still. They buy it. There's no torrent for books that I know of. There's no kid down on the side of the road, with 5 iPads with all the Margaret Atwoods in there. Hey man, you want this for $20? Like, you know what I mean?
Maybe now she's pretty hip and
She's
cool
pretty
now
hip and
with the
cool
TV
now.
show.
Yeah, that's right. But you know what I mean? Like, so
Totally.
that industry has embraced the digital age far better, and the consumers of literary works, I think, have committed to purchasing stuff as opposed to trying to, I'm not sure there's many people honking around online to try to get the new Dan Brown book for
I don't
$1
think so.
cheaper. Are they? It's like,
But even people like me who love technology, I still love having the physical book.
people do. People still love it. The digital copy. I talked to this guy, the Random House people, just a couple of days ago. Digital sales rate kept rising till about 2 years ago, and right now I think in Canada they said they're around 20%. So 2 out of 10 books that get sold in Canada is a digital copy, and 8 out of 10 is a hard copy.
Wow.
And that hasn't changed in like 3 years.
So Newfoundlander in Canada, you're
Yeah.
wearing your Order of Canada there right now.
Huh? Oh, yes, yeah.
You've won the big award.
That's the big trophy. Yeah.
Have you fully assimilated?
Right. I think I have, and I think it's awesome because, like as I say, being a Canadian from Newfoundland, it's just like being a Newfoundlander in Canada. It's like I think we're very lucky that in a very short period of time, Newfoundland has become an important part of the country, and it's kind of beloved right now.
Big time.
And it wasn't always that way, and we've only been at it a little while. We've only been here a generation, really. Maybe a generation and a half.
That's it.
And so we've made quite a mark on the place, I think, in the 50 or 60 years we've been kicking around.
I agree. Alan, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so
I know
much.
you're incredibly busy, but really loved your book, loved the record. Looking forward to more from you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
All right, girls.
Mom, you said it's played again.
Workplace injuries hurt the most at home.
Sometimes, for a wish to come true, it takes a kingdom, because together we're stronger. Tied tight, united we stand, in honor of one child's wish, to fuel the fire that will grant many more. Join the kingdom.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
That was our feature-length interview with Alan Doyle. Be sure to pick up his new book, A Newfoundlander in Canada, which documents the whole early years in the touring of Great Big Sea and his adventures exploring Canada for the first time. It's really funny, and you're going to laugh out loud reading it. But you'll get up and dance to the new record by the Alan Doyle Band, which is Week at the Warehouse. Great music, great fun, and I'm sure you'll enjoy that as well. So thank you for watching Out of the Fog, and tune in again next time. Thanks.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social